Hi, everyone. We are so excited to have you here. This breakout session is titled Moving from Best Intentions and Brute Force to Artificial and Human Intelligence. We're lucky to have Noelle Bennett with us, who is a manager within program management on the consumer talent acquisition team at Amazon. We won't have any Q&A today, but Noelle is happy to answer any questions after her talk. Please welcome Noelle to the stage.
Hello. Hello, LinkedIn. Hello. How's everyone feeling today? Did anyone go out and party last night and have a good time? I want to hear, woo, you did. I probably stayed up a little too late, just to give you guys a little bit of a warning, so you could probably pack some extra baggage in there with those bags under my eyes, but I've been on the road a little bit. So thank you so much for coming to this. I have to be honest, I was a little surprised to find out it was being live streamed, so I had to get my hair done. Also, I really only expected like 40 people. So thank you so much. I always say that at these things, time is the most precious thing that we have at these conferences. So if you're choosing to spend this time with me, I just want to tell you how grateful I am to you, because I know there's a million other choices out there. So my gratitude to you for spending that time with me. And then also, I am really grateful to be able to be on this stage today. So big shout out to my leaders at Amazon and to LinkedIn for asking me to do this. This is really exciting to me to share a little bit about my world and some of those stuff that I work in. So thank you for that. All right. So that's me. Hopefully it's a better headshot than I have on my LinkedIn, so apparently I have to change that. I'm going to go through a little agenda so you guys know what to expect today. I don't take a long time to talk. I probably won't fill the whole thing. The Q&A part, you can just come up to the stage if you have questions afterwards, because we're not going to take up the full time, and I'm happy to answer anything in person with you. And you can also grab me off stage and chat with me about anything you want to that's in my content. So just the way I like to kind of roll. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about me and my introduction into both the role that I have at Amazon, just my philosophy on how I got into this work to begin with, my path. We're going to talk a little bit about the difference between automation and AI so that I can set up some expectations for this talk very clearly so you understand where my expertise actually is and where it ends and where it is in the work that I do versus maybe where you're looking at it from. So we just want to make sure we're super crisp and clear on that. The other one is I'm going to talk about best intentions and brute force. Both of these are practices you will find that I don't think very highly of. So I'll just give you that little warning, but we'll talk about them in depth. Then we're going to talk about something I like to call the skills math. That'll make more sense when it comes up. And finally, and this is probably the more important part, I always like to leave you some practical tips and some takeaways that you can do when you leave my talk. I don't like the TED Talk version of talks where you're like clapping and you're like, this sounds really inspirational, but I don't know what I'm clapping for and I got nothing out of that and now I have nothing to take back to my office and talk about. I mean, they're fun, but then you need something to go back and justify the expense for sending you here, right? So I'm hoping that I can offer you a few things. You're welcome to take pictures of it, but you also will have access to the deck, just to remind you that. And I'm always happy to talk through those in more detail, depending on the size of your company, if you want me to change the scale of my answers to you. So we'll just jump into it. So first of all, the thing you should know about me, my heroes have always been rebels. And for those who know me a little bit or a lot, you know I can be a little rebellious. And I like to do things like a little differently. I'm not your average leadership story. I'm so far from it. I'm not going to go into the laundry list of how I ended up here on this stage, or even the company that I am so proud to work for and so profoundly grateful to be at. But I can summarize that it's been a long and winding, interesting path, and you can just look on my LinkedIn profile and look at that and know, of determination and actually just sheer grit at times. Often I don't feel like I belong here, and I don't know if there's ever anyone else in the room that looks at their job and goes, man, I just don't belong in this job. They're going to figure out pretty soon that I'm not very good at this or someone better. But in fact, I do. And it's taken me probably the better part of 8 of my 9.5 years at Amazon to realize I'm exactly in the right role. And so finding all those rebellious parts of me helped me get into the place that I am. So I do belong here, and I feel pretty comfortable on this stage, so I might hang out for a little while. No, I'm just kidding. So yes, my heroes have always been rebels. This photo that you see behind you here is, it might be some people might recognize it. Raise your hand if you've ever seen this photo somewhere in history books. No? Okay, cool. Maybe I just paid a lot more attention to that. These are women back in World War II who were not trained to be firefighters by trade. They were working in the warehouses in Hawaii during the Pearl Harbor bombings. There was some information out there that this was actually them fighting the fire after Pearl Harbor, after the bombing, but in fact, because some of the men in the firefighting department were killed, they took on this extra job of learning how to fight fires, which they'd never done before. But that's one of the many things that civilian women did during World War II, if you remember. You know, some of our grandmothers and our great-grandmothers even put on overalls and tied up their hair, and they pitched in throughout that war, and they did jobs that they didn't know how to do before then, and it was such an exciting time for them to be able to step into the workforce and do this. My own grandmothers, both in the UK and the United States, they contributed in incredibly unique ways, in very non-traditional ways on both sides of the pond. I was born in England but lived in the United States since I was 10, and yeah, I've lost my accent, obviously. And this trend continued with my mother, Karen. Hi, Mom. She did some really extraordinary work both abroad and in the US for the government, and she has been my North Star on how to live a magnificently rebellious life. So I thank her so much for helping me be where I am. And now as I enter this next era of my career, I find that those women who are not born into a place of natural privilege, or any people who are not, and are not expected to be in the roles that they may excel in, are the new heroes for me. So they are the inspiration behind the work that I want to continue, the one that I'm going to talk about today, which is identifying high potential individuals who come from non-traditional pathways and bringing them into corporate recruiting. And then I help them to get into a place where they can indeed do some really incredible work and excel in it. So we're all rebels, each in our own way. So pay attention to those rebels, my friends, those people who are a little rebellious in what they do. Inside them is a fire, and once you ignite it, you can't put it out. So our job, after we teach them our magical ways of recruiting at Amazon and anywhere that you decide to do this, is to focus on giving them a place to show their skills, earn credibility, give them visibility and support. So I'm going to tell you a little story about my early days of recruiting. I call it Gary and the Great Internet Battle. So one of my very first roles in recruiting, I was working at an agency, a very small agency in a small town in Washington State. And primarily my job was to hire engineers, more like mechanical engineers, not like software engineers. And I did a lot of the smiling and dialing, getting through the gatekeeper like Schweitzer and stuff, and trying to get in and talk to these engineers. And the guy who ran my company, Gary, he would come in like every morning, kind of walk around. He's the guy who gave you those sales tapes to listen to at night, and come on, more dials, it kind of reminded me of a bad movie scene that we all remember, Always Be Closing. So that was basically his attitude. He would come in and really try hard to get us to get on the phones and make more calls. And I had the fortunate opportunity of working with my stepdad on some projects, and he was in the Navy and was in academia as well. And so he had access to this magical thing called the internet, and on the internet there was lots of email addresses, and in those email addresses, I found there were a lot of engineers. So I learned very early on at that period of time how to just send out these blast emails to like lots of cool engineers that worked in these labs, and they were like, oh, hey, thanks for emailing me. It was new back then. They didn't mind so much back then. Now less of a thing. But they were like, oh, it's interesting that you found me in my email. But my boss would come through and he goes, what are you doing? Why are you on that dumb computer? Why are you wasting all your time on that computer? And I was like, Gary, it's the internet. It's so cool. All these cool things can happen. And before you judge, I am in my late 40s, so this is not like I was 10 when I was doing this. So it wasn't quite a big deal for everyone else. He would just tell me I was wasting all of my time on the internet. And I was like, there's so many cool things you can do. You can write these scripts, and they can automatically send things out to people who have graduated from these programs at these universities. It's so awesome. And he was like, I'm serious, Noelle, get back on the phones and stop wasting your time. This went back and forth for the better part of 2 months, and Gary and I just could never see eye to eye on using the internet. And one day in particular, I must have really ticked him off because he pulled me aside and he was just like, I swear to God, if I see you wasting time on the internet, using up all this band something that they call it. I mean, he didn't know what it was called, bandwidth. And then we were dial-up back then where you had to make the tone, so everything took me 15 minutes to get onto the internet. He just told me, that's it, if you do this one more time, we're gonna have a much more serious discussion. I was like, oh, hey, yeah, cool, Gary, sorry. And so that night he left and went on to his usual happy hour, and as soon as he left, like wait for the door to close, and I don't know, beep, beep, dial up, you know? And Chris, she was this awesome sales recruiter that worked in our office. She came by and she's like, what are you doing? Like, can you show me what you're doing right now? And I'm like, oh yeah, of course. So we spent the next 2 hours and I taught her how to dial up, look up lists and all that cool stuff. And he walked back in as we were doing this, and needless to say, my time there was about another 2 weeks before I finally realized this was a battle I was never going to win. Anyway, cut forward about 2 years, I saw him at an event, at a hotel event. I don't know what it was, it's like a wine tasting event. And I walked over to him and I was like, how you doing, Gary? Like, how's everything going? He's like, hey, Noelle, it's great, everything's great. And he told me, you know, what are you doing now? And I was like, oh, I work in HR now, HR law. I work as a legal assistant now in HR law. And he said, oh, you know, I go, how's the business? He's like, oh, yeah, we closed. Yeah, we closed our doors. And I go, oh, yeah, why's that? He goes, well, you might have been right about the internet thing. So, you know, rebellious in our own ways, right? But that was my first foray in learning how to automate some things really early on and getting super resistance on that. Like, I couldn't believe how opposed he was to me actually making some steps in that. So let's just go through how I see recruiting automation versus AI. And this I just took right from Intello, which is a tool I love to work with. I'm not going to read it all the way through for you, but I think at the bottom I've summarized the 2 ways that I look at this. Automation is software that follows pre-programmed rules, and artificial intelligence is designed to simulate human thinking. So I don't like to confuse those two. I think those are two very different disciplines. In my space, they are. I don't know, for other people, they kind of combine AI and automation together. But I want to be very clear with you on where my expertise is, so you don't think that I'm somehow fluent in revolutionary machine learning language. I'm not. And I'm not an expert in AI at all. So what I do have to offer is some fairly time-tested knowledge in watching my own work and the work of my colleagues go from transactional, repetitive, sort of I call it laptop labor. You know, I don't know if you guys ever call that box clicking, professional box clickers, you know, writing Booleans. I remember when I thought I was really smart because I could write Booleans, and now there's all these cool tools that do it for you. So, you know, I got to come up with something better. I was really good at it for a while. Deep filter searches. Remember when you're like maybe the expert in the room that could do the deep filter, and now it only takes like 2 clicks to do that kind of stuff. Smiling and dialing, all these crazy things we did. And now we've entered the arena of artificial intelligence separate from the automation, where AI is technology, and I'm going to say this, that ably mimics what a human can say, think, and do. So that's really the difference between those. And the latter part to me is the most exciting part of the work that I'm just starting to touch. I am not sure that's shared by all my colleagues in talent acquisition. I'm not sure other people are as excited about AI doing all that stuff as I am. But I am just only beginning to understand what is possible when we harness AI in creative, thoughtful, and purposeful ways in this industry. So I've been challenged by amazing individuals inside my own company, and also by those who build the tools that recruiters and talent acquisition leaders are using, or will soon be using, soon enough, it's coming, to see AI for what it truly is. So they've challenged me to think of it as something where it's designed to constantly seek patterns like humans do, learn from the experience like humans do, and self-select the appropriate responses and situations based on those like humans do. But the bots are everywhere. I mean, I've heard the word bots so many times in the last 2 years at every conference that I've been to, maybe 3, that I'm just like, oh yeah, the bots are coming, bots. Like, I keep looking for the bots. I haven't seen one yet, but it'd be really cool if we had like a bunch of bots roaming around the hallway, delivering water or chargers. That would be cool too. Just a note for you guys. So what we're actually dealing with here isn't about creating simply a replica of me or about you. It's creating a system that's more powerful than we can imagine. So it scales to speed and helps us eliminate errors, which I listened to Brendan, who went to Brendan Brown's talk yesterday, oh my gosh, so great. So how storytelling will save you from the robots, again, the robot word. I highly recommend, if you did not get a chance to see it in person, I hope they streamed it, because Brendan really had my brain like firing up and thinking over some new things. And I was brewing in an idea in my head how they could build some of that intelligent element into the dreaded in-mail box, so you can maybe not send terrible in-mails to 600 people at a time and get like angry responses. So I was like that ill-fated impersonal in-mail where you just like, you want to send something personal, but your hiring manager's yelling at you to get resumes, and your recruiting manager's like, I need more numbers. So I want to build some AI into that. That'd be cool, like give you a chance to like customize on the fly, that kind of stuff. So I've spent some time reading articles, essays, studies, and opinions on this, and I feel like I can very inadequately dive into this for days, honestly, and if you ever want to sit down and just talk about this because you're smarter at it than me, please grab me aside and let's do it. But I want to go back to dialing back down to the automation portion of it. So there are a lot of training programs and apps and plugins and widgets and extensions and APIs. And every leader out here probably has some goals, formal or otherwise, around getting your employees to use these things and to be the next superstar recruiter in your organization, right? You really want them to harness the power of these things. And that's supposed to fill your roles at a rapid rate and elevate your talent acquisition team to like near hero status with your leaders and your hiring managers, and that would be awesome. But let's hit the pause button on that for a moment. We need to get some clarity around the who and the how first, and then some practical questions before we talk about the upskilling of recruiters into this new superpowered recruiting era. So we're going to go through that. So first of all, I don't know if anyone knows who Benjamin P. Hardy is. I love to read his blogs. He's a great writer. He's published on a lot of things. Here's a quote that I like to talk about. Upskilling is super hard if you don't have an equal amount of passion from the powers that be and the people that are actually doing the skilling into these new subject areas. And so I fully expect these very two clear reactions whenever I tell the teams it's time to do a new program or try out a new tool, especially at the level that we do at my current company, starts with an A. It's huge, the scope is huge. And so generally I get one of these two reactions, yay, finally, or resistance, right? Like utter resistance. And I find this work is so much more thrilling when you're pulling people in the direction they want to go instead of one they're just being pushed into because you just came up with a new tool that you're going to buy and make everybody try. So grumpy recruiters are no fun, right? Like they're no fun it's not fun to be one, and it's no fun to work with them. So hopefully there's an aspect of the word upskilling, by the way, that I was recently told by some of my colleagues that makes them feel like they're not very smart and they're not doing their job very well. And so like, can we come up with a different word other than upskilling? I was like, I don't know, let me know when you come up with that word. But right now it's upskilling, but I'm not trying to tell you you're terrible at your job. What I'm trying to say is look how amazing you can be once you put all these new things in your toolkit. We have so far to go, you guys. Let's get excited, and please, please trust me to help you get there. Give me a little trust. Give me some of your time and energy, and we're going to get to this place together. So I'm not saying you're bad. It's just that other things are coming, and I want you to be prepared, and I want you to feel like you're happy to go into work every day once you figure out how to use all these cool things. And the trust part is like the most important part. But this is the part of the work that is so deeply personal to me. This is where I made a personal decision about 2 years ago to focus all of my work and efforts, kind of, as much as I can, on the reskilling and the upskilling of people. This is not to be confused with the much more in-depth and very important work of training and development. That's a whole profession in and of itself. I think that they are remarkable people who do extraordinary things. and trusted partners that I need to rely on. But right now, I'll tell you a little about the programs that I have. I have former NFL players that work as recruiters on my team. By design, we go out and recruit people who have injured out of their professional athletics. So I have professional NFL players. I have their spouses that have traveled around with them. I have former military people. Right now I have a former Navy SEAL, an Army Ranger, and then I can't forget my Marine and my Navy folks, or, woohoo. I have a couple firefighters that I've trained on recruiting, salespeople, people from Amazon fulfillment centers, which I think is awesome because this is where they can kind of disappear if you don't pay attention to people if they're in those roles. So I have 10 brand new graduates right now that I'm working with right out of college. By the way, some of whom are leading their very first technical recruiting event today in New York City. This is 9 weeks after they started their training program. They are in a tech recruiting event for me doing blitzes in New York City today. I'm so proud of them, so wherever they are, fingers crossed for you guys. None of them came from recruiting. None of these people had ever done recruiting. In my program, they are in a new role, learning the newest technology right out of the gate. They've never done this before in their life. They didn't even really know what recruiting meant until they joined my team. And here they are learning new recruiting technology, and it's a joy to behold people like that. So, my focus is on removing that mental resistance of not wanting to get deep into the technology. And even for some of the recruiters that we work with currently in our organization, helping them move past the I don't want to, or I'm scared to, or I don't think I can, or this seems like a lot, like this is a lot of stuff. I really want to help remove that resistance from them. So that's why you'll see that Benjamin Hardy one. I want to help pull them in a direction they want to go. So here's what best intentions are not enough, right? This is where we get into the best intentions versus brute force. So there's a few questions you need to ask before you decide, yep, I'm going to upskill all my recruiters. They're going to learn all these cool new things, and we're going to be ready to go as the next rock star recruiting organization. So the first one is, what skills and jobs inside your organization are the most likely to be affected by automation or AI? And you need to know the job family and the actual the skills that might go with that. How many people in your organization need to actually hand over tasks to automated or AI functions? And when I say hand over, let go of it and trust the AI to do the job, right? How many people really need to let that job go? Not mean leave their job, just let part of their job go and let the AI do the work. How many people need to learn automated processes to keep up? They've been in recruiting for a really long time. You're starting to feel like maybe they've got a set book of tricks and they're not really trying anything new. Let's figure out how we can bring them into a space where they're a little bit more comfortable playing with the more high-end technology. So how many people need to keep up and learn some of that stuff? And when do you expect this to happen in your organization? 3 months, 6 months, 12 months? Set a time schedule, answer that question. Sorry, there's lots of words on this, by the way, so I apologize. What specific skills need to be taught? So this is a really important one. What do you need to teach them? Do they need to learn funnel, how to drive the pipeline? Do they need better engagement? Really identify what the AI is supposed to be doing for those people for you. How are you going to train them? Online sessions, you're just going to sign up for some online sessions, send them to a conference. You're going to do lab sessions, by the way. I'm a huge fan of getting recruiters in a room and playing with the tools with them. I don't just say, go do the thing, go learn it and show me how to do it. I do lab sessions and we run them with my programs twice a week. We're trying something new twice a week all together. And we fail together, we have fun together, we poke holes through technology together. It's super cool. Facilitated groups, you're gonna hire somebody externally, or you're gonna have somebody in your team do it, you're gonna pay somebody to do this. What does good look like after you've trained somebody? What does good look like in your organization today? And what does good look like after you've trained somebody to go learn all this cool new stuff? Really, what does great look like? What does it look like when you've invested time and energy and you've really helped people come to a good place in that? Who do those people look like? Who are they? How are they contributing to the organization? Where are you tracking all of this? Like, I built a skills matrix for each one of my recruiters, right? I don't necessarily put it in an LME or something, learning management enterprise system. Do you have another place you do this? So I just built a skills matrix so that every time one of my recruiters learns something new, I check that off and say, cool, their competency level is out of 1 to 10, this person's a 7, and then I keep that for the duration of their time with me, and then when they go to a new manager, I give them the skills matrix, and I'm like, oh, cool, thanks, that's cool, right? Now they know what their expertise is. Super simple to do, no matter how big your organization. How does this skill translate to a new manager, a new role, or a new division? So once they leave your group, or they leave your organization, or you as a manager, is this going to go and help the next person, or are you the only champion of new skills and AI and bots and all that stuff? So does this change how you're going to invest in it? I hope not. Please invest in it. But if you think about that, like if you're only going to have somebody for 6 to 12 months because they're a temp, but then they may go on and work at another organization, just think about how you're going to invest in that. And does this scale over 6 months, 12 months, or 2 years? So does this stuff actually scale over a long period of time inside your organization? And then finally, who are your champions inside the organization? These things cost money, and this takes time. So I always find it super important to find people who are influencers and evangelists inside your organization early. And the way we do it at my company is we write a big, I don't know if anyone's heard how we do this other than the Amazonians in the room. We write a document, an intensive document, and a really good, clear document on what we're going to be doing, and we all sit quietly in a room and read that together, and then we ask each other a lot of questions, and we poke holes in it, and we rewrite it, and we rewrite it, and we rewrite it, and we refine it down until we feel like we have a solid idea, and that is how you get champions and influencers to invest time and energy into the next big initiative. And I cannot tell you, until I came to Amazon, I cannot believe that other companies don't work this way. It is how you get stuff done properly, and I hated to write until I came to this company, and now they're like, can you write a doc on it? I'm like, yeah! I'm not very good at it yet, but I'm working on it, right? It takes a lot of practice to be an amazing doc writer, but please, teach people how to document, write things, and give you ideas, and then go give those to your leaders, because that's how you're gonna get support for all of this stuff. So, best intentions, I just want to try this thing. That's not enough. Now you have to formalize it and put some criteria around it and start following this path. Oh boy, brute force. Brute force is a terrible idea. And brute force in this one means I just want everyone to learn it, and I expect you to learn it, and come back and report to me when you've learned it, and please do that. So this is my quote. This is what I tell people. The language of productivity is everywhere, but the practice of guidance is just not, right? We're always talking about productivity, productivity, productivity. I need them to get more productive. But then we don't really sit there with them or walk them through how to do this. So we've moved out of best intentions to the brute force, just go do it thing, or we're just gonna make everyone learn this, or use it whether you like it or not. We invested money in it. And so I really, honestly, want people to show up and try these things, and even though it's intense and can be demanding on their time, there's a way to be visible and practice guidance with them. So I'm authentic in the way that I care for the careers I'm entrusted with. When I'm asked to break down my expectations and walk them through my vision, I'll take the time to do so they understand why we're doing all this work. And if I think the team is unclear on the definition, which does happen sometimes, they sort of go off on their own and do other things, I'll reset that and talk about the purpose, the levers, the details. This is what I expect you to be, this is the direction I need you to head in. And so practicing guidance and adding lots of clarity to my asks with them is really important. Also, we expect at our company, and I personally expect, a high level of ambiguity with new products and new tools. Like, I want them to be comfortable not knowing all the answers yet and just playing with it and just, working it out. So it's our current culture of rapid change. Who knows if that tool's gonna be around in 6 months anyway, right? So I'm just like, learn what you can. We're not gonna have all the answers. There's not even gonna be enough time to become a super expert in this, because I guarantee you there's a better tool coming around the corner that we're probably gonna wanna look at too. So I do all I can to guide them, but I want them to be comfortable being uncomfortable when they're in this space. So being comfortable with being uncomfortable is sort of a watch phrase in my teams. They know I say it probably every other day. when the turbulent winds of change start, and they always do. I think anyone who's ever worked for me will know that this is a standard Noellism, like, be comfortable being uncomfortable, you guys, right? And they're like, so tired of hearing that from you. On this same note, failure with all of these tools and all of this new automation is an important part of my practice of guidance. So as often as I ask them to be super cool with ambiguity, I also say, probably no less than 10 or 15 times a week, be prepared to fail out loud, on purpose, in front of everyone. So if you're failing, you can't fail in isolation in the corner and not know how to use this stuff and not ask questions. I need you to be like, raise your hand and say, I'm failing, I don't understand it, I'm in over my head, help me. That's another practice of guidance in AI and tools. And so I always tell people, just be real comfortable with failing right out loud in front of me because I'm fine with it. And the quicker you ask questions, the quicker we can address these things and move on. So still, after all of this, not everyone is made for this kind of work. There are recruiters who just can't seem to make the leap from where they are today to where they need to be in 3 months, 6 months, or a year. And it's coming so fast. I do worry that there are people that are just not able to make that transition, not because they can't, but because they just don't want to, or they're stubborn in the way that they do things and they're just not ready to release that. So maybe they don't have a fortunate visionary in their organization or in their chain who's thinking of these things. I've been very fortunate where I am that I have visionaries all around me who are always thinking of these things. And also there's the uncomfortable truth that sometimes people are just never ready or willing to take those kind of leaps. And no matter how much you show up, maybe you just won't see a better version of their skill sets. Maybe you just won't. And that's probably a very different talk that's happening somewhere else in LinkedIn, and someone's going to have that talk better than me. But I do say this. My only recommendation here is if you get to a point where you need to make a decision on the talent on your team, and if they're just not ready to skill up, please take time to endeavor the process to really understand their skill sets and what they're capable of before you make snap decisions on that. Because I think that there's potential in every individual in this industry, and it's our job as leaders to help scale them up, not give up, scale up, right? So just look at that person as an individual and help them arrive at that decision in their own time, but look at their talents and figure that out. Let's see, here's another one I love. Speaking of those people, don't spend time beating it on a wall hoping to transform it into a door. Sometimes these things are just not right for your organization, right? Like sometimes you're like, all right, I've done everything I can to talk to my leaders and make this tool accessible and do all these awesome things. Sometimes it just doesn't work, or the tool isn't delivering what you thought it was going to deliver, and you just have to like step away and be like, cool, well, that one didn't work, and endeavor the experimentation, the spirit of experimentation, and be okay with the experimentation part. But check in with the teams as they're doing the work, and the ones who are receiving the benefits from this, like your hiring managers, just see if you're doing it too ambitiously and the success you're striving for starts to unravel, that's probably not a good thing. If you stay with one methodology or one laborious tool too long, oh boy, the fatigue sets in and the face, the grim faces start showing up every morning, like, oh, I don't want to use this. That's bad too. If you experiment too often with too many things, you will just confuse people. So I think that's an important part. Don't throw a ton of tools at people and expect them to be able to scale up. And if you keep chasing the trend tail, like you're always chasing new trend, then not only are you confusing yourself and your recruiters, you're probably also confusing your leadership team, and they're not sure if you have a clear vision on how to move people from, the laptop labor to automated technology. So I would say stop banging on that. Individual assessment has to come into this. I really do a lot of front-end work to select the right talent for my team, people who have high potential, a comfort with ambiguity, have faced adversity, who know how to deal with this stuff. But if you have people that you inherit that just aren't there, again, well, don't spend time beating on that wall. All right, so now we're going to go on to what I call it's kind of closing up here in a minute, but we're going to go on to the skills math. So We are talking about when human intelligence, when we actually spend time on helping people skill up and start looking at their jobs differently, and we start giving them some positive things about their role and talking to them like, yes, you can, give yourself some time, let me invest time in you. And that meets automation, right? And so we're like, try these cool new tools with me, and let's all figure this out together, and please like leave the bad behaviors aside, and let's try this new exciting stuff together. And then we have what I call superior skills, and this is, in my program, I teach some things called superior skills, and this is the magic formula for what I think the next level of sourcers or recruiters are going to be. This is taking human intelligence at its biggest capacity, taking all the things they already know, adding some automation or some AI, taking some skill sets away to let the AI do that work, some of the automation, let the automation do that work, and then also teaching them these other things. So superior skills, and I don't call them soft skills. I think I don't like the term soft skills because I think these are they form the groundwork of building sharp individuals, like really sharp professionals, sharp thinkers, good strategists, people who are able to look around corners and bring me ideas that can change the way that we do business if we help them thrive. So it's A to Z business knowledge around our company and everything that we offer. That's a superior skill. Giving them business acumen, things like how to show up and be present in meetings in an executive and polished way. That's a good one. I teach them critical thinking if it isn't part of their already existing culture. Like, how do you, not everyone was raised with critical thinking as part of their vocabulary. And then crucial conversations. I don't know if anyone else read the book Crucial Conversations. I teach that right away. Like the first week they're in my program, we pull out that book, Crucial Conversations, and I teach them how to have crucial conversations. And taking a page from another amazing speaker that I've seen on this stage, and I can never get enough of, Carla Harris, I also teach them how to lead from the seat that they're in. So I don't care what level they are, I don't care what their job title is, I don't care if we hired them yesterday or if they're senior to me. Whatever their role is in the company, I want them to feel ownership and lead from the seat that they're in. And there's an amazing transformation that happens when you treat people like they're leaders, even if they don't have titles. Nothing bothers me more than people talking down to people just because they don't have the right title in the room. All those people need to be up at the table talking about things, but you need to give them tools so they can show up with confidence and competence and show them how to contribute to those conversations. So those are some of the superior skills that we teach, and we start that day one. We don't wait till they get promoted. We don't wait until something else. We teach that on day one. So that's sort of like the recruiter math. Some of the challenges I see happening in the automation side of it, by the way, is the skepticism of new technology. You know, I cannot tell you how many times that bot thing has come up where like people are just like, no, I don't want to use the bots. Oh, I'm never gonna have a job again. You know, like, no, we've got to embrace this better. We've got to figure out a way to sell this to our teams and to our employees and to our leaders in a way that makes them excited about this stuff. And then, of course, AI also learns human biases along the way. So, as an example, maybe a particular AI tool intends to reduce unconscious bias by ignoring things like gender, age, or things like that. But the same AI has been trained how to match patterns in recruiting that we've already selected inside of our organization. So previous behaviors from the users. So all of that human bias can be embedded into your recruiting process, perhaps unconsciously. And you know, an example that we've had is Team XYZ had made a dozen hires from one of the top 10 schools that teaches this, right? And so those people are still in the company and they're thriving and doing well. And all that data is being fed into the tool saying these people do well, and they also happen to come from this first-class school that not everybody has access to, right? So the tool selects those candidates because we fed it the bias. And so we need to have really good partnerships and user discussions around that tool, not selecting in bias and doing a better job of that. Another one, if any tool promises you that it can deliver better diversity to your company, a recent example that I have, someone else in this room knows this story. I just said, how can you tell me your diversity tool is going to revolutionize my diversity when I look very closely at your company, you have zero diversity on your leadership? I looked very closely at everybody in your company. You have 93 men, you have 5 women, And of those people, you have nobody of color. So how is your tool doing a good job for me if I'm looking at your company and you're not reflecting diversity? So I do not like to invest in tools that can't use their own tools, obviously, to make their problems go away or to help them be better at doing things. So please ask questions like that when you're talking to new tool developers. And they always have excuses why, oh, we tried and this and that. I'm like, well, your tool's supposed to solve that problem for me, so I need you to solve that for you and then come back and talk to me a little bit more about it. So, just going to throw that out there. It's my little end of TED Talk soapbox moment there. So at the very end of this, it's really important that as we ask our people to upskill and to move out of sort of this transactional recruiting mode, take the time to nurture them, make the time to guide them. We're all very busy people, I know that. Recognize the power of your presence in the process. So show up to those meetings, ask questions, see how they're doing with it, ask them what they've learned or read about lately. Don't just give them directive and walk away. The power of your presence in those things is so deeply important. Create spaces for people to share ideas openly. Just because they don't have the job title in your company as being the person who makes the decisions about the tools doesn't mean they don't have interesting things to say or contribute. So if you create spaces to share that information and to encourage people to have ideas, I think that's really important. And then get comfortable with the word experiment. So one of the things I think we do really well at our company is we try experiments. We don't just buy a tool and force it to work. If it's not going to work, it's not going to work, and we'll leave it alone. But we experiment with things, and we do that happily. And one-on-ones are a luxury for a lot of managers. I get that. But if you develop subject matter experts who love this type of work in your team, make the time to spend the time with them one-on-one and get to know more about it. And then just make it more about what they're excited about, not about how's your day going, how many people did you push through your pipeline, da-da-da-da. That's called a status meeting. A one-on-one is a career development conversation, and I want you to have those. And if you don't have those with your leader, please ask your leader to make that time with you so you can bring these exciting things to the table. If your brain cells are firing off right now and you're like, oh, I do want to go back and ask them if we can try this tool, then write the document, schedule some time, and make them have a conversation, and then get lots of input from your colleagues along the way and see how they feel about it too. So some things I ask are what's broken on our team? What do we hear the most about from our candidates and our hiring teams? What's the public perception of our hiring process right now? How can we improve that? How are we hurting our customer? Right now, what are we doing? In mails. What can we change given what we know today? How could we make some changes around this? They might not know all the answers, but if you start getting them to start thinking about this, it's an awesome time for us to bring up the next level of recruiter and turn them into leaders almost from the very beginning. So the leaders that I've worked and admired the most that I've worked for, the ones who turned this page over for me and helped me achieve some larger goals and made a positive impact, the ones that I will take the blood, sweat, and many tears and wear them like a badge of pride. These are the leaders who made the time to connect with me authentically about my ideas in this space and who spoke with me, not at me, and could connect with me in a way that made me feel very seen and very heard. And in this space of AI and lots of intellect flying around, sometimes as a recruiter you just feel like you're being pushed over to the side while more exciting things happen. And so be the leader that wants to hear that input and have people be seen and heard. And by the way, this wasn't all accolades and compliments when I spoke with them. They asked me very probing, difficult questions. One's designed to get me to think deeply on this work. Some were or are actually my critics still today. And even if they don't know it, they've made a huge impact on how I look at things, how I unpack ideas now, how I challenge my own teams, and how I set new goals for myself. So I don't care if people are critical of me. They just should talk to me so that I can start thinking on things more deeply. They took the time to practice guidance in their own way with me, and I really appreciated it. And I will forever hold every other leader that I ever have at that same standard. I always like to make sure I'm surrounding myself with good leaders who are actively involved in this, and I hope you do as well. And I hope you hold yourself to that standard, no matter how busy we are. Okay, so that's the end of my TED Talk version, and we're going to very quickly go through what I promised. Oops, sorry. Boop, boop. Here's your takeaways, because I always like to give you 3 things you can do this month. So do a talent assessment of your team. Create a skills matrix for each one of your recruiters and just find out what they know and commit that to paper. You can just do that right away. Like, tell me the tools that you're using. Tell me how, let's do that. And then try some new tools or trials and betas. And by the way, most tool companies that I work with, if I ask for a 30-day freebie or a 90-day freebie, they will give me a license for 30 or 90 days for free to test out, as long as I promise to give them feedback. So I would say free is good, paid is better, right? You want to get all the features that you possibly can. So try to invest a little bit of money, but if you just don't have the budget, so there's something you can do this month. This year, identify the champions, the evangelists, the influencers, and get commitments from them to help grow this program for you, to upskill your recruiters into the next level. Pilot an upskill program with some of your team, so select some people you think are high potential individuals, and just start a program and track how they upskill as you give them new things to try. Even a small one. Document the results. I'm going back to that written document I'm a big fan of. Write about it, and then share it up the chain. Share it up to your leaders and tell them this is how much better they did. And then challenge a percentage of your team to become subject matter experts. That's what SMEs are. In AI tools or automation. When I say AI tools, that means they don't have to be subject matter experts in machine learning and all that, but they should go do some reading and understand how it can impact their business. And then go try some new tools. And give them a platform to come talk about it. Schedule a talk. Get your leaders in the room. Make sure that you're giving them visibility and credibility. And in the future, I would recommend that you change the dialogue around innovation and experimentation with tools and AI. And then finally, commit a skills-building dialogue being the norm, right? So commit to a skills-building dialogue being the norm in your organization. And that's it for me. So thank you so much for your time today. I hope that I went through that a little fast. It's a lot of information, but I really appreciate your attention. If you have any questions, you're welcome to come up and chat with me. And again, I appreciate you spending time with me today. Thank you.